10. Bo Jackson, RB. Years in Oakland, 4, 1987 to 1990. Phenom is the only word I could use to describe Bo Jackson. A 230-pound man should not be able to run a sub-4.2 40-yard dash. No one around at that time could forget the 221-yard breakout party Jackson had in Seattle on a Monday night in 1987. The party was capped off with a 91-yard run after which Jackson couldn't slow down before running into the tunnel. He is the only guy I've ever seen run over a guy without breaking stride. Jackson used that blinding speed to get 3 runs longer than 80 yards for his career. Compare that to Emmitt Smith, NFL all-time rushing leader, who only has 1 run over 70 yards in 15 years. Sadly, Bo only played 4 years and that is why he's not number 1. His injury, along with his part-time duty, didn't allow Jackson to do all he could do for the Raiders. Though, Jackson did still manage to lead the Raiders to the AFC Championship game at the end of the 1990 season. However, he couldn't play in it because of a career-ending hip injury. Imagine what he could have done if he had stayed healthy. Seriously, one of the biggest what-ifs in NFL history. 9. Cliff Branch, Wr. Years in Oakland, 14, 1972 to 1985. Cliff Branch was the world-class sprinting, fear-in-the-defense striking kind of receiver that Al Davis loves. Davis has looked for another like Branch ever since he retired over 25 years ago. Branch has to be considered one of the NFL's all-time greatest deep threats to ever play. The fear he struck in defense has helped his fellow number 6 all-time Raider, Biletnikoff, do his damage over the middle and on intermediate routes. Tight ends Casper and later Todd Christensen also benefited from Branch's presence as did the running game. All 3 Raider Super Bowls were won during the time this depth threat garnered extra attention. In typical Raider fashion, Branch may have been the fastest player to wear an NFL uniform. 8. Howie Long, D&T. Years in Oakland, 13, 1981 to 1993. Howie Long took the approach of beating up the man in front of him and playing the run on the way to the quarterback. The result was all 5 opposing offensive linemen having to prepare for the most dominant defensive lineman in the NFL during the early 80s for both the run and pass. I say all 5 because Long played nose tackle, defensive tackle and defensive end. Long ended with 84 sacks in his career, putting him at number 2 all-time for the Raiders. Long made 2 All-Pro and 8 Pro Bowl teams while with the Raiders. His efforts helped push the 1983 Raiders into Super Bowl 18 and come away with the victory. 7. Ted Hendricks, Pound. Years in Oakland, 9, 1975 to 1983. Ted Hendricks is one of the most colorful characters the Raiders have ever had and that's saying a lot for this franchise. Legend has it that he had strippers in training camp with the sombrero and lemonade. When the team got to the practice field, Hendricks said, "Come on boys, it's fun time." He's also been spotted at practice on a horse wearing an old army helmet. On the football field, Hendricks was one of the smartest players in the history of the league and was very physical with his 6 feet 8 inches, 220-pound frame. His smarts and physicality led him to 2 All-Pro teams and 4 Pro Bowl appearances on the way to all 3 of the Raiders' Super Bowl wins. An opposing player once said, "Running into Ted is like running to a piece of scrap iron." 6. Ken Stabler, QB. Years in Oakland, 10, 1970 to 1979. The NFL is a quarterback-driven league, and that has long been the case. As such, it only makes sense that the Raiders' all-time leading passer, Ken Stabler, comes in this high on the list. Stabler finished his 10-year Raiders career with 19,078 yards and 150 touchdowns, including a victory over the Minnesota Vikings in Super Bowl XI. More than anything, Ken Stabler was a winner. As the Raiders' starting quarterback, he held a record of 69-26-1 and was a huge part of their success throughout the 1970s. With 19 fourth-quarter comebacks and 26 game-winning drives, there isn't Raider quarterback in team history who was more clutch, and that probably won't change anytime soon. 5. Jim Otto, c. Years in Oakland, 15, 1960 to 1974. If only Jim Otto could have played 2 more years on those gimpy knees. This man deserved to win a Super Bowl more than any man that wore the silver and black but never did get one. Otto played 15 seasons for the Raiders, from 1960 to 1974. The Raiders won the Super Bowl in 1976, but he did have a huge hand in turning a doormat franchise into one of the proudest in the NFL. Otto exemplified a commitment to excellence as he made the All-AFL team in 10 straight years. He then went on to play in the first 3 NFC/AFC Pro Bowls and made the NFL All-Pro team twice. Otto paid the price with his body for playing in all 210 regular season games, 308 total through countless injuries. The result of all that was 40 surgeries. As the now handicapped Otto says he wouldn't change a thing. Now that's a commitment to excellence. 4. Tim Brown, Wr. Years in Oakland, 16, 1988 to 2003. Tim Brown is one of the greatest all-time receivers in NFL history and number 1 all-time for the Raiders, without question. Brown played most of his career with guys like Todd Marinovich, Jay Schroeder, Vince Evans and Jeff George, which makes that feat all the more impressive. Rich Gannon did come in and help get Brown to a Super Bowl in the 2002 season, but it was late in Brown's career and it wasn't for long. However, Brown did make 8 Pro Bowls in his 16 years with the Raiders. I just can't help but wonder what type of numbers he would have put up with quarterbacks like Steve Young and Joe Montana during his prime. Don't forget he was a punt returner and a great one in his first 9 years. 3. Art Shell, T. Years in Oakland, 14, 1968 to 1981. Art Shell showed the NFL his true greatness when his 1976 Raiders beat the Minnesota Vikings in the Super Bowl. A big part of why that happened was because Shell prevented fellow Hall of Famer Alan Page from accruing any statistical evidence he even played in the game. He didn't even get to dive on the pile. Shell protected Stabler's front side and later Plunkett's blind side as both quarterbacks led the Raiders to Super Bowl wins under his care. Shell's care ended up being worth 2 All-Pro selections and 8 Pro Bowls. With the vertical offense the Raiders ran, Shell had to protect the quarterback that much longer. He has to be considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest left tackle to ever play the game. If only he could coach the way he played. Sorry, I had to. 2. Gene Upshaw, G. Years in Oakland, 15, 1967 to 1981. Gene Upshaw was a huge tackle in his collegiate days. Coach Davis saw his speed and moved him to guard. Many laughed at Davis for putting such a big man at guard back then, but Davis laughed last. Davis ended up with the best guard to ever play the game and 2 Super Bowl wins during Upshaw's career. Upshaw's speed made him the perfect escort to Raider halfbacks on outside runs. He also had the power to run block and the feet to pass block. It didn't end well for Jim Marshall when he faced that combination in Upshaw during Super Bowl XI. Just as his teammate Shell did to Page, Upshaw prevented Marshall from getting any stats that proved he ever played in Super Bowl XI. Upshaw went on to help the Raiders win 1 more Super Bowl before his days as a Raider were over. He had 5 All-Pro selections as well as 7 Pro Bowl appearances in his career. 1. Marcus Allen, RB. Years in Oakland, 11, 1982 to 1992. Of all the Oakland Raider greats, Marcus Allen has to be considered the best, and it's not even close. After an incredible collegiate career, Marcus Allen turned into an immediate top-tier running back in the NFL and won the NFL's Rookie of the Year award. The next year, he won the Super Bowl MVP. 2 years after that, he won the NFL MVP. Then in Super Bowl 18, Allen did the unforgettable. He reversed the field on a 74-yard touchdown run that is widely considered the greatest rush in NFL history. During Allen's MVP year, he set a record for total yards from scrimmage which took decades to be broken by Marshall Faulk. After all that, Allen showed himself to be the ultimate team player. Bo Jackson came to town and Allen volunteered to move to fullback. That selfless move allowed the Raiders to have the best 11 offensive players the field. It might have been the best backfield ever as well. Even though Allen was different from the rest as far as accolades go, he was still the same in the way it counted. He was a team player who wanted to win by any means necessary. What a player! What a player! For watching video. Here are some other videos we think you might like, and don't forget to click subscribe. Thanks.